why I want to go to like 300 acres one day if I'm lucky.
Well, that's the dream plan, I think, for all of us. We just want less disturbance, more time for ourselves.
Yeah, and I don't dislike people or anything, but the older I get and the more I understand physiology and its connection to nature, and my son is a major nature boy as well, and it's kind of, in studying brains, has taught me the power of the electromagnetic earth.
Mm-hmm.
And living in cities is just not
That doesn't help too much.
No, it's not conducive to anything helpful to biology. So I'm not a homesteader or anything like that, but let's see about getting some light. Where's my coffee? I'm still drinking coffee.
Perfect. What kind of coffee are you drinking?
Purity. It's the coffee I sell. Cleanest
Okay.
coffee on earth, white labeled by Ben Greenfield and a bunch of other people.
Amazing.
They knock it out the park with no toxins, no mold, antioxidants, keeping everything.
Mm-hmm. Are you doing some kind of special preparation with your coffee? Or like, are you putting any butter or MCT?
Yeah. Well, I've done all of that craziness in the past, but right now I do. I always take L-theanine and GABA with coffee. There's MCT oil in here, and there's collagen in here. So I'm doing a new experiment. I'm trying to get off cream, dairy. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have dairy for a really, really long time. And then when I went carnivore is really boring without cheese and stuff. I started to for 3 years now. I'm like, cheese and milk is amazing. And I'm not sure it's actually if it's in my best interest at this point. I know it's not great. Mm-hmm. So I just went and had 4,000 vials of blood taken this morning, and I'm getting everything checked out. Because I
saw your stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when do the results come in?
I don't know. It'll be a few days. It was a Boston Heart Lab. I don't know how long that takes, and just all the hormones. So we'll see. Oh, so anyway, amazing. I'm trying a couple new, and then
experiments. Yeah, let me know what kind of thing works, and I'll probably try that.
Yeah, I mean, stacking nootropics with coffee. I mean, caffeine and L-theanine and caffeine and MCT. I mean, it helps. It's a cognitive and a beautiful mood booster. So I didn't start drinking coffee until my 40s.
Oh, really?
So
wow. How did you escape for that long?
I thought it was disgusting.
Fair enough. Okay.
Disgusting. That was it. And then post-pregnancy, your taste buds change when you're pregnant dramatically. So there can be some things that you loved that the smell now will make you throw up when you're pregnant, or the taste, you're like, oh, I can't ever eat that again. So there are some things that I still don't ever eat anymore. I'm like, God, I used to really love sushi, but don't bring it near me now. And I hated coffee. And then I kind of accidentally tasted my sister's, and it was, oh my God. I was like, it does taste like wine and chocolate and a party in your mouth, what women had been telling me. And it had literally been disgusting to me. So when my son was 5 or 6, I tasted it and I was like, wow. And then drinking it, I said, no wonder you all drink this, because it feels amazing. Yeah. I was like, wow, this feels incredible, so.
Yeah, especially if you haven't had it for the longest period of time, you'd feel more of the energy boost, because most of the people right now, they're even having coffee when they're 12 or 14. And then that's not really the best time to start.
It's horrible. It's like starting weed when you're a child. You shouldn't do it. Marijuana has medical purposes. I use it with my patients a lot, but I don't use it on 12-year-olds.
Exactly.
So it does different things to the human system. But yeah, and I went off of it for a year and a half, because I was drinking too much and I got rebound headaches. And so I was like, oh, coffee. And I'm telling you, it's not just it's mood for me. It definitely, I'm like, no, my mood is completely better. I definitely get that. I think catecholamine support. So I'm not giving it up anytime soon.
Yeah, you can keep it in, since you make really nice fun. Okay, let's begin the podcast. I'm going to hit the start button. Perfect. Do you fall in the camp that goes the extra mile to have low fat products or low fat meals as a part of your healthy journey? Maybe you've read for years that scientists and doctors have labeled fat as the enemy. Well, it seems to me that this is the general notion of people or most people around the world. But if you've been following me for a while, then you know that I'm a big fan of fat. And I often end up in dinner parties or conversations where fat is ultimately the root of all evil. And to clear your confusion today, I have brought on the show a special person. She is a holistic doctor that specializes in brain performance with drug free approaches. She has seen thousands of patients in the last 20 years. She's a specialist who focuses on training, and she basically focuses on integrated neurotherapies that identify and address the real cause of mental illness, learning disorders, and chronic illnesses. She has given over 25 years of her life learning the best practices from functional medical doctors and masters in their fields. Her work first got my attention because I saw her unique way of looking at things like complex problems and looking or just identifying simple solutions based on various things on biology, even including quantum biology. She's a board certified neurofeedback specialist. She's an epigenetic coach. She's authored The Codes of Longevity, and her clinic got awarded the best mental health clinic in Atlanta in 2020. Dr. Stephanie Rimka, welcome to the show.
Hi, CJ. I'm so glad to be here. Man, you make me sound awesome.
Well, you are
use
awesome.
that on everything.
Well, let me tell you what the kind of things you've done with the kind of work that you've put out. You are completely awesome. And this couldn't even get to 10% of, showing the world what you've done. But when I first saw you, Dr. Rimka, I would have never guessed that you're a qualified professional medical doctor with so many years of experience, because I would just think that you're a supermodel. So tell me, what is the secret? You do some kind of a modeling on the side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I started modeling young.
My intuition was right.
I still do a little bit of it. It's interesting because patients will sometimes see me in Atlanta in salons, or I'm on the walls, or sometimes some places, and they're like, are
you the one?
Yeah, that's me actually. I just do it for fun, now. And if somebody will give me a free haircut or free anything, a free cup of coffee, sure, I'll take a picture.
Oh, why not?
Yeah. I hated it as a kid. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting when you grow older how much you can appreciate that anybody would like to take your picture now. It means a lot because I'm almost 50. So, yeah. So I do that. It's just a fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I just had to ask you that question because you know what my intuition was just telling me, like, check with her. Maybe she is. But let's move on. Yeah. Now, science has advanced in the past years. We've gone from calories to macronutrients to micronutrients, and now we're looking at things such as peptides and genetic modifications. But most of the world is still stuck on how many calories they're eating or a general stereotype of macronutrients. Let me explain. When you look at the world, the general population, people who are not completely into the science or the scientific literature, their perception would be something like, hey, protein is healthy because it normally builds our muscles and makes us strong. And carbohydrates are great for us because they're everywhere and they provide us with the energy that we need to run, to jump, or even like chocolates when we're just sitting down and not doing anything. It just gives us an insulin spike and some kind of an energy boost. But all across the board, I've come across that people normally think that fat is bad because fat makes us fat. And I wanted to get your take on the lens that people look at fat with.
Yeah, it's interesting when talking about this, and I was kind of surprised pre-show. I'm like, oh, they demonize fat still over there, but I live in a little bit of a bubble, right? I keep myself secluded. I haven't owned a TV in 25 years or so. So I kind of try to keep my world. And I go out occasionally to learn what people are doing, and patients come and I'm like, oh, wow, that's what they're doing. I have to re-educate you. So I fell for the fat causes fat thing, 20 something years ago. It was very, very popular. Most of us in the holistic health care world fell for it. And it was, so everybody be kind to yourself. We all fell for it. They did, Western medicine did a beautiful job of manipulating studies and lying to us very successfully. Ansel Keys was, as far as I'm concerned, a researching criminal. And, what that study did to say, saturated fat raises cholesterol, and saturated fat and cholesterol cause heart disease. And it seems like common sense. Well, eating fat would make you fat. I mean, it does seem like that's what would happen. But when you combine manipulated studies and lies to end up selling food products, right? Because really what it all came down to sell things, it's common sense kind of gets thrown, like it doesn't make any sense. And the reason that worked is because people forgot how the human body works, or never knew how it worked, or really, and why to me that happened is because we became so disconnected from nature. Because if you just look at nature and look at human beings that are connected to the earth and live in rhythms with the way when the sun goes up and the sun goes down, and when it gets cold outside and when it's hot outside, and how they live and eat when they're deeply connected to nature, and technology is not infiltrating their lives and altering their biology and their choices. They don't have a refrigerator, right? They don't have a grocery store, right?
They don't have a Wi-Fi router.
Yeah, right. It becomes super easy to know what humans are supposed to eat because they all kind of do the same thing. And it might look a little bit different as to what type of thing they're eating, but it's all the same. And fat is of no concern to those people, and none of them are fat. Nobody's overweight. Nobody's obese. Nobody has cardiovascular disease. Nobody has cancer. Nobody has diabetes in any of these populations. Nobody even has cavities in their teeth in any of these populations that just are connected to the earth and are not infiltrated with technology. And they just eat and live the way they're designed. And when you eat and live the way a human is designed, it is a strong animal-based, animal protein diet with a few carbohydrates that are thrown in there. And when I say animal-based, I mean blood, bones, meat, organs, the whole thing. If you don't get the whole thing in, you're not getting the right, everything that you need. And it's a complete game changer because it really isn't about fat. The fat is actually irrelevant, and we've become obsessed with it. It's really protein. And protein, perfect protein, nature designed it perfectly because it put the fat right in it in the perfect amounts. So you never have to even think about it. If you get enough protein every day, you will absolutely get enough fat every day, just right. The problem is when you start adding in fats that are unnatural, that have been made in factories, that are machine-based seed oils, artificial, made from seeds. Canola is not even a real thing. If you make it in a lab and you press it into something and then you make people eat it, it's going to make them fat and sick, right? Because it's not that it makes them fat, it makes them sick. And fat, obesity, is just a symptom of disease. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It completely does. I would also agree that these things are, in a way, non-native to our biology. And every time you take canola oil or you process all these things that, different kind of vegetable oils, which are mostly GMO and high temperatures, then when they enter our body, they just cause a havoc because traditionally we haven't been able to understand how those lipid molecules work in our body. And I love the fact that you mentioned that, in the real world, in the natural world, everything is in the perfect ratio. And if you just stick to that ratio and not just try to be a genius and add all of these things on the top, then chances are you will be quite balanced. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And we've made it really complicated. Yeah, we're the only humans. I mean, we're the only animal. We're an animal. People have to remember that. Humans are still an animal. And, you know, we're not an herbivore. We are a certain type of animal with a certain type of gastrointestinal tract. And we have a very special kind of brain compared to everything. And we have this brain because we learned to crack open skulls and bones and eat brains and bone marrow. And by doing that, which is fat, okay, you have to remember a brain is 70% fat. So why is fat good? Because it's protecting and you're made of it in the most important parts of your body. Your brain is 70% fat, that spinal cord that goes all the way down and every single nerve that's going everywhere, that master control system, completely insulated and wrapped up in fat. If you start having the fat strip away, you have horrible disease processes such as Guillain-Barré syndrome, muscular sclerosis, all kinds of horrible things happen if the fat is destroyed, right? Every cell, every ball in us is covered in what's called a phospholipid bilayer membrane. It's fat. It's saturated fat and cholesterol. Every hormone is cholesterol. We are nothing but a bunch of animal protein and animal fat, minerals, right, which are little rocks, ions, compartmentalized in these like bags of special structured water. So we can make electromagnetic charge. That's what we are. And if we can't do that anymore, we're dead. But you know, the system is animal protein and animal fat. And I don't think people understand how much fat we really have and we really need. So by not eating it, you know, it puts a great burden on the system to try and compensate and make all that cholesterol and find the saturated fat to repair everything, to make all the hormones, to keep the brain structure intact, you know? So low fat diets are absolutely, to me, in part and parcel with the increase in learning disorders, increase in autism, degenerative disorders such as Parkinson's, MS, dementia. I mean, you can't, it's a form, low fat diets are a form of anorexia for the brain. It can't tolerate it. You know, it's not going to last real long. You might lose some weight, big deal. Losing weight at the cost of losing your brain mass is a serious problem.
Yeah, I would never take that. But you would be surprised how many people are willing to go after this thing where even if they wake up the next day and they feel a bit of brain fog, and that is obviously because of either their extreme caloric restriction or extreme reduction of fat. As long as they look good in front of the mirror, they will take it. And what happens in your experience when people shuttle through many different diets? So we have the vegans, the carnivores, the paleo, and then the low fat, and then the high protein, and you know, so many things out there. And on an average, I read a study that says an human will, in his entire lifetime, try 96 different types of eating, like let's call them diets, different types of eating, and then they often shuttle their weight and it becomes more like a yo-yo kind of a dieting. Now, what's the impact of this yo-yo dieting on our cellular structures? Like, do you see in your practice that people who are normally, you know, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight all the time, do their cells get damaged to a certain extent?
So there's really two questions right there. So there's two different things that I heard. Let me make sure I'm going to answer them hopefully the right way. So one is, you called it, so 96. I didn't even know there could be that many ways of eating. That's kind of mind blowing. What are you talking about, right? I thought I knew a lot too. So let's say we're doing a bunch of variations of ways of eating. I would call, so you can have a healthy diet variation happening. Actually, we should have diet variation. That's a normal cyclical thing in tune with nature, right? There should be changes seasonally because food available to you will change seasonally. And the amount, because that should coincide with the amount of sunlight and the temperature, right? So how much sunlight there is, how much darkness there is, and heat and cold. That information completely changes. That's light and dark. It's nutrition, and it changes how your cells function. It changes how your mitochondria process energy, and it changes appetite. So let me say diet variation is awesome. So some people, by making some of these changes, it might be fantastic for them. And in fact, I actually do encourage diet variation, and patients will come to me often. And let's say they're eating a standard American diet, right? Which is a high carb, low fat, low protein diet, and processed junk foods and full of seed oils, right? But it is a plant-based, low protein, high carb diet, low fat. That's what the standard American diet, that's what that pyramid is describing. I have to get them out of that immediately. Like I can't even do anything with your brain like that. So my first move is usually right into something like a paleo, because that's they can wrap their head around it. And then we have layers that we go from, like a paleo to autoimmune paleo to, let's say, Wall's protocol to possibly the GAPS diet to a specific carbohydrate. Maybe I got to go carnivore, but each one, FODMAPs, low FODMAP, they go, each layer starts just removing more and more things. It eliminates more things, right? So that can be an outrageously healthy thing for a person in their journey if they've gotten sick, right? Because sometimes you can't take sometimes a standard American diet person and take them all the way to, you need transition. It's like I can't make them run a marathon in 2 weeks either, right?
There's also the willpower, which will fail all the time.
Well, yeah, and it's not willpower. You have to learn how to. Willpower is bullshit, basically. It's biochemistry, amino acids, electromagnetic charge, and sleep. So I have to look at hormones and get everything. You can make willpower. I can give you things to make you have willpower, or I can take it away. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have that. Now, yo-yo dieting, changing your diet to lose weight is not the same as changing your diet to get healthy. Trying to go for health is nowhere near the same thing as just trying to lose weight. So I will say, I'll let you know, I specialize in mental health and brain issues. I don't get a ton of yo-yo dieters coming to me unless they're coming to me because they have eating disorders, right? So we have diagnosed eating disorders that have caused problems, and I'm helping them with that. So people don't come to me. I mean, I do get people to lose weight, and I run a fat loss group and that kind of thing, but that's not my big experience. So I don't get a ton of that. I mean, of course, I'll go through what they have going wrong with them. But usually for me, by the time that comes to me, it's because they have a body dysmorphia issue. I have a mental health issue. I'm looking at balancing their neurotransmitters. I'm looking at helping them with the emotional dysregulation that's happening to cause this, that's driving it. So anybody who's doing that much yo-yo dieting, there's something deeper there. And there's going to be a reason, a chronic yo-yo diet, or 50 pounds, 100 pounds, weight gain, that has an emotional basis. That has a trauma basis usually. And it's not as simple as what you eat by any means. Now, that being said, they're destroying themselves, right? It's basically just intermittent bouts of anorexic type behavior. And the starvation, famine threat to the human body keeps breaking it down. So the brain has one thing to do. It has to be assessing your safety level all the time. It's on high alert. Are we safe, or are we in danger? And if you're safe, that's where we want to be most of the time. Then your body is optimized. It's in a calm state. Metabolism is good. It can make and repair things. It does its job. It can find the cancer cells. It can find the ripped up things. It can make collagen. It can make estrogen and testosterone. It's happy. It likes to be there. It should be there most of the time. It should only be in a life or death situation for 30 to 60 seconds, right? When a lion is coming through the jungle, or a tribe is coming, and you just fight or run and you get done with it pretty quickly. Long-term chronic stress, like lack of food, means either you're a terrible hunter, like you have no skills, you're in a famine situation where the environment around you is very, very harsh, and this is a dangerous time. You absolutely should never get pregnant if there's no food. You shouldn't be making, your body has to stop doing things. It's like it needs to slow down metabolism. It needs to say, slow down burning fat, because I don't know if any more food is coming. So we better hold on to everything, because this is a bad time. This is dangerous, right? It's not going to release eggs on a woman. It's not going to do things. It's dangerous. right? Or so there's that. There's war, right? I mean, there's something bad happening, or like you're a really unlikable person and nobody in your tribe is helping you. Either way, this is a bad situation. Okay, it's not meant to go on and on and on and on and on. So even fasting is getting overdone. People are over fasting and they're wrecking themselves because, again, I remind them, I'm like, why are you telling your body you're a terrible hunter? Why are you telling your body you're in famine all the time? You shouldn't be. Why are you fasting that much? It's not necessary. You see? So that alone changes the brain. You being on fight or flight sympathetic, you're ripping through your neurotransmitters, your hormones, and just down to the cellular level. If we get you want me to talk about like blood glucose and insulin and diabetes and all that, that's a lot happening, right? People are having these disordered signals. And so the brain and the cells have to eventually say, I've got to ignore, I'm hearing too many loud messages. It's like, I'm a mom. Okay. You're young. I don't think you have kids, right?
No.
Okay. So any of the parents out there will understand this. So if my son isn't cleaning his room, if I'm telling him something, I get louder and louder and louder. And eventually, if you're yelling at your kid all the time, they don't even listen to you when you're yelling, right? It's like they just start ignoring even that. So it's kind of what the body is doing when you're yo-yo dieting so much, severe caloric restriction, it's yelling all the time. And then it realizes I'm being ignored. And so it starts shutting down its ability to respond. That's some of the receptor issues. That's kind of an analogy of what's going on. So it's breaking down systems and it's keeping you in a fight or flight state. And the body is not going to lose weight. It's not going to stay healthy. It's not going to do anything when it feels like it's in a life or death situation. And you have to feed it so it stops thinking. And the best thing to feed it is fat. That calms it right down. It's like, oh, I'm so safe and happy. Thank you for fat. Like, I know the brain, that's what it needs. A lot of fat.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the brain by its structure itself is 70% of fat. And then we make all of these different hormones when you mentioned some of them like estrogen, testosterone, but also things like leptin, which you also talk about in your work, which also get released in the brain region, and it tells us that we are full. It's called the satiety hormone, but it has so many other functions in the body as well. And I really like when you mentioned about the light and dark cycles, the electromagnetism, the structured water, and how when people look at, let's say, I use the word willpower, but eventually willpower kind of fails off because you have these systems biology approach and you have these multifactorial things like how much you're sleeping, if you're connected to the ground or not, if you're getting those negative electrons, or you, if you're structuring your water, what kind of minerals are you having? And all of those things kind of they give your organs a boost, they give your cells a boost, they give your brain a boost. Am I going right with my analogy, or is there something that...
Yeah, well, and you can just take it down deeper, right? So all of these, hormones and neurotransmitters. So, I'll say this. I'm not a fan of willpower. I think willpower is complete bullshit. Because here's the thing, any yo-yo dieter out there, I'm not a yo-yo dieter, I never did it, but I've fasted at least 150 times. I've gone 10 plus days, many, many times in 25 years. So there is a small amount of what I would say is willpower involved in some of these things. There is a mental aspect to things in life, absolutely, to doing hard things. But any yo-yo dieter, and especially women, they get very delusional self-images of themselves, and they think of themselves as repeated failures. I don't have will. They say things, I don't have willpower. I just don't have it and I can't do it. I'm like, what are you talking about? You actually, for 6 weeks or 10 weeks, it's usually in that 6 to 10 week point where eventually willpower cannot override biology. It's designed that way to keep us alive. The brain's like, I don't care how hard you're going to try to do this. I'm going to jack this. And women are way more sensitive to ghrelin and leptin than men, by the way. We hit it much sooner because our physiology is way more sensitive to getting enough protein and fat in our systems than it is for you. In a famine time, you could still make a baby. We cannot. We will have a complete shutdown of systems. And so our appetite, so all you women, please understand that it gets way bigger, much harder signal. So don't be trying to compete with your husband on how you're doing some of these things. It's just not fair. It's a very different setup. So, that's like way up here. Really what's happening is down inside the cells. It's all about creating electricity, which then creates magnetic pulses and how that syncs with the earth. Every single cell in you has 0.07 volts of electrical charge. When you combine that with how many cells, the billions and I don't know if it's billions or trillions. I think
it's like last time I checked, it was about 70 trillion, but it keeps going up and down.
I'm gonna say 37 trillion plus. I don't know, but in general, what we're thinking based upon that's what a cell, how much electricity, that charge, it's all electrical, gradients. That's how we make things is, electricity, poo, 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 we're shooting back and forth all the time, right? That's 2 trillion volts of electricity in my body. I am 2 trillion volts of power. That's what really is here. That's what's going on. As my voltage goes down, just like my battery can start dying, I have to recharge it. We have to recharge it. And how do we do that is really important. And one of the ways we recharge, we refuel is food. It's only one way. Now, it's a way people are, to me, way too obsessed with talking about, to be honest. But you know what packs a lot of energy? Fat. It carries a lot more potential. You have to have fat to insulate, to have charge. That's why we're so full of it.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't, right? But then you brought up grounding. Just like in my home, if we don't have grounding wires everywhere, everything, the appliances blow up. They figured that out. They're like, oh, it gets too much charge. Boom. And things. That's what's happening in your brain with seizures. That's what's happening with dementia. That's what's happening with Alzheimer's. And that's with mental illness. Mental illness, bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, all of these things that are taking a deep toll on people's brains. And when we give them therapies to try and fix it, and then it comes back and it comes back, that's because their brain can no longer hold the charge. If you cannot hold the charge, we have a serious problem. And one way you're going to never hold the charge is if you become low fat, for sure, because that's insulating and holding it. We also need a crap ton of minerals, because that's ions, right? Calcium, potassium, magnesium, zinc, all these things that we know. They're creating copper, right? They're creating the ability, these electrical gradients that are giving the potential charge that are there. We are a battery. There's a reason in that movie, The Matrix, they called us copper top and had us plugged in the machines to run everything, because we got, 2 trillion volts of power in us. And so my job is to try and teach that to my patients so they can learn to access the power to increase the charge, increase their charge in every way possible. And that's a whole lot more than food. Food is a foundation because we got to do it almost every day, sort of. But all the invisible stuff matters too, right? The electricity that's hitting me, the lights that's hitting me, the electromagnetic pulses that are hitting me, 5G, the sleep. There's so many things that you mentioned that are critical to how your cell controls and maintains charge. So hormones and all that other stuff is way up here, really. We can test it easily, but it's really about here. Hormones, chemistry is long after electricity. It's electricity first. That's the physics of what's going on. So I'm more concerned with that, to be honest, and I explain it to them like, okay, fat and ATP, blah, blah, blah. Once I get somebody just to start eating this way, CJ, they just feel better so quickly. I'm like, yeah. And all the studies are very clear on obesity. Very clear. It's about the more protein you eat, the more fat you're going to lose, because the protein, like I said, has the perfect fat in it. And your body is starving for the nitrogen in that protein to do things. And it will eat less food if it gets what it needs. So the carbohydrates don't have enough nitrogen and amino acids are fat. So we keep wanting to eat more and more and more. It's very hard to watch a human being overeat steak.
No, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
No.
You're like, okay, I just know I'm good. I cannot eat anymore. But you know what? How you could overeat potato chips?
Or ice cream.
Steak? Oh,
think about that.
I have a second stomach just for ice cream.
For ice cream.
Right? It's an endless pit.
Yeah. I see that a lot.
It comes down to electricity and getting protons and I know it's not really what you wanted to talk about, but that's really what it comes down to. That's what matters more.
So what we're really talking about is, fat is good and carries a lot of energy, and it, is just, even when you look at the caloric, lots of fat.
It's natural fat though. That's what I think is what has happened is that people got tricked into like all fat is bad, right? And then they took the good fat, natural animal fat, things that exist in nature that are just there, and avocados full of fat. Okay. Right. Steaks full of fat. You know what I mean? Bone marrow full of fat. And then they replaced it with these fake lab made seed oils that nobody has ever encountered in nature. And our biology doesn't know what to do with it. Well, what happens with those canola oils and soybean oils and peanut oils and stuff is that we have to use them. So we embed those into the cell membranes. We embed those throughout the brain. And as I described, short circuit electricity, that's what happens.
It doesn't do a very good job.
It does a horrible, and it should. It's like weaving plastic into a quilt. It's like, well, I'm using yarn and occasionally I've got this plastic stuff. It changes the matrix of what the entire blanket is going to look like. And certain parts will be hard and crusty and certain parts will be soft. Some parts will feel good and some parts are not going to work. That's what's happening. So it's beyond, is fat good or bad? You know what I mean? You definitely need the right ones in there, and you need those membranes and those structures to be clean so they can be functional. If your cholesterol is damaged in your skin, no matter how much sunlight comes onto it, you're not going to make the pre-hormone vitamin D. You can't if the cholesterol is damaged. So there's more to just even getting enough of it. It's also, the nature of how toxic is it. But to keep it simple, like if you just eat like a human,
you're going to stay out of all the problems.
You'll stay out of it. People, I you know what my big thing is, people say, oh, do you teach your patients to read labels? I'm like, no, they shouldn't be reading a label.
Exactly.
If there's a label on it, it's probably bad for you.
It's probably come from a factory.
Yeah.
Which you don't want.
No.
But correct me if I'm wrong. For anyone who's listening, when people make this poor choice of having having French fries cooked in canola oil or any kind of seed oils, or just frying something and getting that different oil structures in your brain, in your body, and then it travels to your brain, and then it changes the cell membranes, and then now your lipid membrane is made out of this bad, or let's call it damaged fat.
Yeah.
How long does it take your body to replace that? When I thought it would be almost about when you start having this bad diets for a few days even, then it takes about a year or more for your body to actually replace all the cell membranes with like a good quality, like let's say saturated fat. So, is that correct?
Well, okay, so it's a good question. So I would say this. I don't know exactly if we're just saying cell membranes, because those seed oils too are also a primary driver of diabetes and metabolic disease. It's a big, big problem. You can start seeing very quick results in healing, actually.
Okay.
But and I'm talking 24 to 36 hours, you can start seeing metabolic functional changes, right? In glucose and insulin and leptin very, very quickly. The body will respond very quickly to eating the proper human diet very quickly, changing that seed oil and fake carbohydrate distribution and with enough protein and fat, very, very quickly. Upregulates immune system and stuff rapidly. Yeah. Now, as far as saying, rebuilding a human body, to me, like they'll say the 7-year thing, it's about 1.5 years. about a year and a
Okay.
half, you can rebuild everything and be a completely new human being. So your number to me is about right. But as far as how it starts happening, it happens very quickly. We are so blessed in this technology of the human body, which is probably the most advanced technology ever created. And yet we become so obsessed with these little machines and not look at the machine of what is this, not looking at what the DNA is actually doing in our own system, not looking at how we're resonant frequency and how what kind of field we actually project out of our heart and our brain, and what our mitochondria are truly doing, and how we're a synergy of trillions of microorganisms that are helping us and exchanging information all the time. It's magical what we're capable of doing. And we seem to become too obsessed at times with outside stuff instead of like, you got to remember who you are and what this can do. And really in about a year and a half, it seems like I can restructure anything. I've had like every kind of bizarre thing. And if that person will go back to living like a healthy human, and we do a lot of electromagnetic type of stuff, because you got to usually do more. You got to do more to heal,
Exactly.
And if you were healthy, like you got to hit it pretty hard to like make that accelerated thing. But we're damn lucky, because if you look at what lungs can do, people can smoke and they can be tarred and disgusting, and they stop smoking. And within a matter of weeks, there's a rapid change in that lung structure. We are so blessed that your lungs are capable of doing this, that it doesn't take as long to heal as it took to get yourself sick. Right. People, they say, well, how long is this going to take? I'm like, well, to be fair, if you've been doing this for 10 years, you should give your body 10 years to heal. Now, but you're very lucky that it's not going to take that long. People sometimes, I think, we've been tricked into believing that we're broken in some kind of way, that our body is stupid. Like the term autoimmune is a psyop. That's a total trick. Junk DNA, again, it's just ways of telling us that we're not powerful, that we don't have 2 trillion volts of power, that we're not divine, that we don't create constantly. The idea of cutting yourself and getting a scab is truly a miracle. What our body can do, and that's all from DC current. How that is happening is DC current charge starts that process. So, but people aren't taught that. They aren't understanding you are a superhero. You really are. So they've been brainwashed into thinking my body is so stupid. It doesn't even know its own immune system. It's deranged. It's having an overreaction. It doesn't do this. It doesn't. And they believe that story, and they're programming their DNA by repeating that story, and causing major epigenetic changes on their DNA and how they function. And that's what I have a real big problem with in healthcare. So it's very fast to heal, actually. But
that
a lot
is
of
good news.
come down to your mind.
That's good news.
You have to have somebody that's going to tell you, oh no, you're healthy. You can heal this. Because if you don't go to somebody like that and they say something to you like, you're sick, you have a mental illness, you're going to need this drug the rest of your life. That's very different than, oh, you just have an inflammation disorder in your brain. We're going to heal that up. Your brain's going to get real calm, and you're never going to need a drug again in your life.
Well, it's unfortunate that not many people think this way, or like most of the doctors, or especially around this region, would give prescriptions and put you on a drug and get, all your insurance claims and things like that. But no one's actually addressing the, let's say, biology of belief and things like that, like epigenetic factors. So I'm glad you brought this up.
There are. I think there's a lot of us out here. We're just off in our little offices, in our little space, right?
In your little bubble.
Yeah, we're in our little bubble, and we all know each other, kind of, right? Yeah. But one of the beauties of social media and Zoom and things like that is that it is allowing people to learn more. It's like, suddenly a few years ago, I'm in my little practice, and I'm paying for ads in a little magazine and this to get people to know that, I have drug-free solutions for ADHD or PTSD or panic. I can help with that. We can just change your brain. Then suddenly I could go like this and be like, hey, blah, 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 and do a Facebook Live or Instagram, that was it was a sudden TV show for free, basically, that I could educate people on, because I'm never going to compete with a pharmaceutical ad on TV. Like none of us little Joe Schmoes seeing patients can ever buy one of those ads, right?
Yeah.
So how is anybody going to know there's something besides Paxil or Zoloft or Ritalin? They don't know because their physicians are never going to tell them, because unfortunately medical school is bought and paid for by big pharma. That is just what they're taught. Physicians are great people. I've been texting 5 of them this morning. They're friends of mine. I'm interviewing one for my podcast coming up. These are my friends. Now, they're all guys and women that have gotten into epigenetics and nutrition and peptides. And they're like, oh, because they had the wherewithal to go, this isn't really working. My people aren't actually getting better. I'm like, I know. Isn't that funny how it doesn't make anybody better to give them a drug? Nobody gets better, and it's not their fault. It's just what they're taught. It's just what you're taught. And I've been taught a lot of things that were wrong too. And you have to unlearn and you have to change. So hopefully more and more of us, because we can talk about it with each other, more and more are coming around, every day. I consider it very, like, I feel like I get wings every time I convert some Western, medicine trained person. And I've done quite a few. A lot of physicians see me as my patients, and then they kind of, like, where did you learn this stuff?
Your approach.
Yeah. And then they kind of go into it. They learn neurofeedback, or they change their psychiatry practice and to go into psychedelics or ketamine and stuff. It's a game changer when they see there's other options, and they see you can really get sick people well, not just keep them, I don't know, sedated in some kind of way, instead of really well. And it takes effort, but it's very possible.
Perfect. I'm so happy that you're not just talking to the physicians, but through podcasts and through other interviews, you're just talking to the general people out there, because most of the times what happens is you're facing something. It's probably not that serious to talk to a doctor. Probably you're ashamed to talk to your, whether your partner or your friends. And then if you did end up talking to someone, they would just tell you their own version of a story, which they have believed, which they have come across, because none of them have any kind of medical experience, but probably things that they have scrolled over Instagram. Or if, God forbid, you meet a negative person, this person is just going to tell you, oh, your life is doomed and nothing's going to happen. And then that causes a downstream of all other problems. But I am so happy and grateful that we have platforms like this now, where your experience and expertise can directly get into the, just in the hands of the people who need it the most. And it doesn't, because we have this kind of a culture, or this kind of an understanding that we try to push everything a lot. So if you don't feel good, you're going to push it, and you're going to push it, and you're going to push it till the time it's too late. And then you're like, oh shit, I have to go to the doctor. Yeah. But then if you have some kind of an information before that point where you completely burn out, when you completely burn all the bridges, and now it's too late, then it's just great to have things like this. And I'm so glad you share everything that you do so openly, and we can all learn from you. Now, you're talking about energy and volts, and we're looking at cellular biology. We spoke about mitochondria. What are your top ways that you think people can get their cellular energy back? Do you look at, what are your views on mitochondrial health? Is there a specific protocol or an approach, or what's your tips and tricks that people can take away today to increase their mitochondrial health?
Well, yeah. I mean, almost everything I do is mitochondrial health, right? So, and how I got into that more and more was really doing neurofeedback. And you're recording electrical activity, electrical potential, and electroencephalogram. That's what it is, right? It's electricity. Yep. And in doing it and knowing certain brain waves and what I'm trying to do with those brain waves, and how those brain waves are actually the same as the earth, Schumann resonance, right? It was like this aha moment with a patient as I was doing stuff. And I'm like, as I explained it, I've explained it 1,000 times about, I'm going to put your brain into alpha. We're going to do this alpha theta crossover, blah, blah, blah. It's in the same exact frequency as the Schumann resonance of the earth. And I was like, wait a minute, what did I just say? What did I just say? What did I just say? And it made me become obsessed with figuring out, why are we doing it in this frequency of the earth? And then you look at, it's really about nature. I said it in the beginning, I'll say it again. Everything comes down to, if your mitochondria cannot shuttle hydrogen, protons, electrons, and into the oxygen correctly to make ATP and all this, and the special structured water that they're making that keep you hydrated, you're going to die. That's how cyanide kills you very quickly. It just shuts down all the mitochondria and you're done. Like that. There is no kind of coming back if all of those things shut down. Now, I said things: hydrogen, oxygen, electrons. That's what's happening. Like, so where does that stuff come from? Hydrogen you get from food, right? That's why eating matters, and you can get more hydrogen and cleaner hydrogens from certain things. Fat is great. Natural fat has a ton of it. Okay.
Have you tried molecular hydrogen?
Yes.
Do you use molecular hydrogen? Okay.
I do. I'm going to molecular hydrogen and get in my sauna after this. I have to say that might be one of my favorite things right now. I am kind of blown away at molecular hydrogen and its relationship with deuterium and how the mitochondria work. So I'm about to actually just run my own deuterium testing on myself. I got my kits right here.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yeah, I kind of don't want to see my levels, but it's okay. You know, you got to start somewhere, right? So deuterium is a hydrogen isotope, so that they're related and it matters. And deuterium,
heavier hydrogen. It's
so,
named the heavier cousin of hydrogen, right?
Yeah. Yep. It is. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny. You ever see the movie Twins?
No, I haven't.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's a basketball or a ping pong, like the size and the weight difference.
Like that analogy.
Big, yeah. You know, one is big and one is not. But so knowing that, the electrons are all about, this is Einstein taught us this. Electrons have to be on a photon of light. That's how they're shuttling through. We are light beings. So what do I love? Light. Like, I'm super into light. I will have to say my neurofeedback training led me down the Dr. Jack Kruse pathway. So you're familiar with him?
Yes,
right?
I am.
So years and years ago, was in his forum and that kind of stuff. And he's, you know, he's intense and he can be out there with a lot of stuff, very strong opinions, but the light, water, magnetism foundation really is the game changer. And that is how I approach patients. So I'm looking at their light, and light is a nutrient, and I'm looking at water and the structure of that, and that includes the minerals and that kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean you have to drink a ton of water. I'm talking about the water in their system. I'm talking about, can their mitochondria make structured water? Are they having structured water to make electrical potential all over the place or not? And the magnetism comes from the electricity going through flowing through a system, and then it creates a magnetic pulse. But that's related to the earth as well. We're sitting on a giant magnet hurling through space. So the magnet of the earth itself, this big crystal that pulses off magnetic pulses, and the ionosphere that has all that electrical thunder lightning activity, is creating this electromagnetic space that harmonizes me. It wrecks my brain. So I care about bringing people's brain, keeping people's electricity down, having their frequency be in a healthy state, not oscillating too high, having charge. So sunlight's outrageous to me. Minerals, the foundation of the diet. I want a natural human diet, which is an animal-based, natural fat-based, enough protein for nitrogen, so enough hydrogen is coming into that. Breathing. People have forgotten how to breathe, believe it or not. Because we live in so much fight or flight. So breathing techniques, ways to, and then vagal exercises, cranial nerve 10, things that turn the body switch to parasympathetic, rest and digest. I think you should be in rest and digest the overwhelming majority of the time, but most of us are in fight or flight the overwhelming majority of the time, right?
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, so everything I do is about that. So big one in that, meditation, vagal exercises of gargling, humming, singing, heart rate variability, using that biofeedback is great to know that number and teach yourself how to breathe and use emotion, box breathing, things that are covering that. I love all kinds of brain therapies and devices that actually, I have devices. I throwing 27 volts of DC current right into my ulnar and to my arteries. I wear I sleep on a PEMF device all night. I have other PEMF devices. I have a near infrared light-based sauna I go in almost every day. So I deal with lights. I mean, I'm in my living room and I got an LED panel right here. I mean, it's red light.
I love it. I love it.
UV light, lots of little tricks and tips and devices from other countries that are kind of hidden. I love ozone. I love oxygen. So there's that. Respect the sun. I'm into sunlight. I'm into getting the sun. That's usually the first thing I do with people is you got to start waking up and going to bed as the sun wakes up and going to bed. And we're to me in a darkness deficiency syndrome. And so when the sun goes down, I want darkness because everyone's so obsessed with glutathione or NAC or SOD or nitric oxide, kind of sunlight things. They're not thinking about melatonin and how that's the antioxidant at night that is doing everything. And if you aren't in total darkness and you don't get real good sleep, none of the toxins are draining from your brain. None of that deuterium is getting dumped from your brain, and you're going to get sicker and sicker and sicker, right? So sunlight, outside grounding. I mean, here's an earth and grounding blanket sitting right on my couch. It's everywhere. So
I'm standing on an earthing mat too.
Yeah. If I can't be outside, bring as much inside as you can, but get outside. Take breaks. You've got to live and move and breathe like a primal human again, because our natural state is to be joyous, to be happy, to be relaxed, and have abundant food. There was no stress in actually getting food like we think. You look at cultures like the Hadza and the Maasai, they're joyous and happy as a natural state of being. There is no depression. There is no anxiety. They don't even know they don't have words for it. It doesn't exist. It's not normal. You do not have a gene designed to make you depressed. You do not have a gene designed to give you cancer. That's all nonsense. So sunlight, charge, so standing on the earth, being in the ocean, going to a waterfall, hiking in nature, being barefoot as much as possible, breathing. Butenko breathing is a great format. Easy for people to start, but even just box breathing, the 4 in, hold, 4 out, it's free. This stuff is free. Take off your sunglasses. I teach them like you're distorting your brain's interpretation of what time of day it is. Stop being afraid of the sun. Don't use sunblock. So I start with basic, teaching them about their electromagnetic beings of light. So if that's the case, let's get some electricity in you. Let's get some magnetism in you, and let's get some light in you.
Love it.
And then I talk about structure. I said, well, your structure is made of animal protein and fat. So I can't build you up if I don't have enough stuff to build. How am I going to build a house if I have no bricks and I don't have any wood? I can't, right? So once I explain that to them, they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I got to build you back up. We got to renovate you, autophagy, right? And apoptosis. We got to break down all the broken down, knock everything down, throw out all the crap. It's molded, get rid of it. It's this, get rid of it. It's damaged, get rid of it. But I got to bring new stuff in. And that will be the quality of the light and the quality of the food and drink you put in your mouth. It all matters. So that's where I start.
What's your favorite ways to raise autophagy, since you mentioned it? Is it just by fasting? Or are you taking some kind of calorie restriction mimetics?
I have a nice fasting mimetic. So I have an AMPK activator and supplement, Dr. Chris Shade. So anybody wants that, you can message me. I'll sell you some. It's amazing. So I do that. Okay. But autophagy, you gotta remember, it's always going on, but it's going to slow down if you're chronically feeding yourself. It's not normal to be eating 6 times a day, right? There's even questions if 3 times a day is normal, right? But so fasting is a powerful way, but you don't need to do it all the time. And if you're just eating with what makes sense for your system and not overeating, and again, going with like the protein leverage hypothesis, if you have enough protein first, there's satiety because that fat is already there. And that's not a protein shake and all this fake stuff. It's real meat food. Eat some salmon, eat some oysters, eat some sardines, eat a steak,
Use a fatty cut of meat, preferably, right?
Yeah. Well, Yes, and it varies though. I will say some
Hmm.
women do better. There is a little bit of genetic variation in your
Hmm.
health status on how much fat you can process and tolerate. I'm not a
Okay.
high fat. My body doesn't love super high fat. My genetics support that, and my liver status supports that. I've done it, and it doesn't work well for me.
Do you take
So
enzymes?
I yes and no. It
Okay.
depends. I have, I'm not a I, as I've gotten older and my
Hmm.
stress levels higher, yes, right?
Okay.
But I don't think humans, you aren't designed to just take, we're not designed to take anything. We don't
Hmm.
need anything if we were living in accordance with nature. But the further we get from nature and the more technology we add to our biology, that's why we need to take supplements and pills. It's not normal to take all that stuff though.
Hmm.
You can get real deep and real fancy, and I like molecular hydrogen. I think that's a powerhouse supplement. I take peptides. I get it because I'm 48 years old and I have lived in a high tech industrial cities my entire life. I get on planes all the time. I sit in front of computers all the time. I'm living a very abnormal life driving a car, right? It's not
Hmm.
normal. You know what I mean?
Using a
So
phone,
using the cell, right? These toxic, I poison myself
non-native EMFs.
with 5G. That's a form of poison. That's an attack on my mitochondria. My mitochondria are being damaged right now, just sitting here doing this. When I go outside, they're still being damaged because these towers are planted everywhere. So we're trying to keep the health of the mitochondria, and you can't just look at food though, right? I have to be aware, like, oh, right. And so how many ways can I shield and protect as well as nurture and care for, right? I'm a mom. I got to not only protect my child, I have to nurture and feed him. I have two jobs: feed him, feed him, feed him so he can grow, grow, grow. But I've also got to protect him from threats, right? So there's two things that have to be done simultaneously for the body, for the mitochondria, for yourself. So that's how I like to start. It's a big thing of I try to get people to forget about food because they want that to be the magic bullet on everything, and I'm like, it's not.
Hmm.
That's the hyper focus on food is a problem to me.
I love that. I love that that we're giving people these nuggets of looking and actually increasing their curiosity of what else might there be apart from just having enough protein or just reducing your carbohydrate load. But these are invisible factors that you mentioned that make a serious difference. Like even in like whatever you just mentioned, I completely believe in it. I'm always on the beach. I'm always trying to get into the ocean. I live right next to the ocean, so I'll try
Oh,
to go every day for 30 minutes, or I'll
yes.
ground myself for at least 22 minutes because that's the amount of time it takes for the electricity to roam around your body and come back. I will have molecular hydrogen every day. I have a red light and infrared light panel. I'm working on getting an infrared sauna. Um, First thing, breathing exercises in the morning, looking at the sun, touching the ground. A lot of those things like make a lot of sense to me. But
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people who are listening, this will be a good place for them to start. You
And
also
those are all
mentioned,
free. Half of what you said was free. That's the
yeah.
thing. Sometimes people don't want to, they would rather give me $10,000 for a 3-month care plan than
Mhm.
go home and do the free things I just told them to do. And I have been at a party and people ask me what to do for their ADHD kid. I tell them I just gave them a $5,000 consult totally for free.
Mhm.
And they go home and they do nothing. If they walk into my office and they pay me $2,000 for the same information in 2 visits, they're going to do everything I said. And it's the same thing, but it's like, sometimes again, that's why we have to charge because people
Mhm.
don't assign value to it. And that's my only problem with a lot of like, God, why is it so hard to get people to understand this? I teach entire courses. I teach a 3-month course for women called 3R, the 3R
Mhm.
reset. Then that leads to them graduating and going to the M1, the master's, another 3 months, 3, 4 months in there. And that entire time, I'm just getting them strong enough so I can teach them about their electromagnetic charge. That's all I do in the master's. Like, this is what we go over in these devices and therapies, and I read labs for them and all kinds of stuff. And it takes until about the 5th month that they're like, oh, That's why you keep saying to go in the sun.
I've heard about this before.
I'm like, oh my God. If you would have stopped wasting all our, I mean, yes, but it takes so long because it sounds, but it's free. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing the earth gave you all the divine answers you already need for free?
Yeah.
But they want some magical supplement. I'm like, okay.
Always looking for that.
I have those supplements and I need to sell them, CJ, to make a living. Don't get me wrong. However, there's no pill for the sun. You know what I mean? You will never replace that. There's no magical morning sun spectrum bulb that'll do it. Like, again, I know if you're in Alaska or Sweden, up in Siberia, you're going to need to buy one of those lamps.
Yeah.
However, most of you, just get your ass outside in the morning. Okay?
Exactly. It's for free.
It's free. I mean, it's simple breathing. It's just set aside the time. You know, there's free everything for a lot of this on YouTube at this point. You can have a meditation. You can have a guided meditation. You don't need an app. You can just breathe. You can make a labyrinth in your backyard in a day if you wanted to with leaves for free and walk it. But that's, people are not, we're so conditioned. We have to buy a thing to make it better. Put a cream or a potion or this. And I'm like, well, why don't you just start with light and breathing and gratitude and meditation and positive
thoughts. The basics.
Yeah,
those are the basics, but they go a long way.
Hugging people, maybe having sex again, like basics, things that you're designed to do. Like how Wim Hof would say, I'm not going to say the way he says it, but there's not many things. The brain is only hardwired to do a few things.
It's very difficult for anyone to say the way Wim Hof says things because he's got that different accent to say it.
He can get away with anything. Like, wow.
And the seriousness that he says it with, you're just like, oh, okay, I'll just have to listen to this guy.
I know.
But yeah, if we tried, we'd fail.
And see, and that's what's great. We have those types of models. Well, he's exceptional. I mean, he is this outlier, exceptional. We're like, wow. But it's inspirational to let you know, like, that's what's possible. And you don't need to get to that level. Don't be intimidated. I know a lot of women will see that and they're like, oh, I'm like, okay, look, just relax. I can't do what he does and I'm not trying to. Like, let's just, you know what I mean? Like Ben Greenfield and David Goggins, or like some of these like super bizarre outlier examples of possible. That's awesome. And let's just start where you are, Mama. Can you walk to the mailbox? Can you
park your car a bit far and walk to the
like what can we do every day? How can we have more sun every day? How can we turn the lights off more at night? How can we use candles instead? Every little thing adds up. And then after a year, if we put a new behavior in every month, after a year, we've made big things. And now these are permanent lifestyle changes that it's not a 30-day fix or a 90-day thing that, that yo-yo dieting. This isn't yo-yo health. This is changing your life, bringing you closer in harmony with nature and letting that guide you. Then you'll never need a damn book again to tell you what to eat. You don't need books for that. We don't. I mean, it's watch an episode. Have you ever watched the show Alone on the History Channel?
I haven't.
Oh my God, it's stunning. So
what is it about?
Survivalist. So my son is like a survivalist and a prepper, like the kind of kid that he's only 15, but at 10 or 11, he said, Mom, so, I just want to be the kind of man that can go into the woods with one bag and survive for a year. So he's very into, like, he, makes fire he knows how to make fire out of nothing. He knows all the survival things. Like, it's stunning.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, he's teaching me a lot. Like, I'm like, oh man, I don't know anything about that, honey, but like, I'm into it. So I have all this prepper stuff because of him, because he's into it. I'm like, sure. He's like, Mom, I'm like, sure, honey, I'll do it. You must be, he's channeling information. He's naturally born to be connected to the earth. He prefers to sleep on the ground than in a bed. He told me that. He's like, I'd rather sleep on the ground. I actually like it better. Wow. He wants to sleep outside in the yard all the time. Sometimes I'm like, honey, it's 30 degrees. You can't go outside. You're 10. I don't know about this, right? So anyway, he, what was I talking about? I got my son.
You're talking about how connected he, the show Alone.
Oh yeah. So that's why I started watching the show.
Yeah.
On the History Channel. And it's a better take than the show Naked and Afraid. I'd heard about that show and I was like, what did they do? So I did watch a couple episodes.
Yeah.
Well, watching Naked and Afraid or Alone, where they take like 10 people and they drop them off on these remote locations in the wilderness and they're alone. Then they're allowed to take like 10 items. So they're all survivalist, prepper kind of people, hunters or military, they whatever. And they have cameras and they have to just record themselves, but they are alone. They have nobody to talk to. They have to hunt. They got to find food. It becomes very obvious. That's the closest like natural environment you're going to see. The naked part is a little bizarre for that Naked and Afraid. You can see very quickly how people are they don't have any trouble figuring out they're not going to survive real long on berries and roots.
No.
Like you're done. The vegetarians all collapse. They all have to convert or they're going to die very quickly. It's very obvious. It's very, very obvious in those shows. So Alone, it's very, very educational. It's very.
I'll have a look at it.
Yeah.
Thanks for
kind of helped me. I was a vegetarian for 14 years.
I was a vegan for 3 years, and then I couldn't hang on a pull-up bar anymore, so I just decided.
I was a vegan for 12. I was a vegan for 12, and I couldn't get pregnant. And they said, you're in menopause. I was in menopause in my 30s, and very, very sick. My thyroid, I had no estrogen, no testosterone, no thyroid hormones. I had to be put on everything. Oh my God. And it was lovely doctors that helped convince me, like, you're going to die and you cannot keep doing this, for spiritual reasons. I was really driven by the spiritual consciousness and connection and all that, falling into all that trap and not understanding what it means to be human. And I had to really go on that journey to let me look at the most spiritual tribes that I respect. Oh, look, they all
are eating it. Yeah.
They all eat nothing but meat. You know what I mean? And the plants are medicine. Very, very different. So through all that, it becomes very obvious. Once you're connected to nature and living in that environment, nobody needs to tell you, you don't need to combine. You don't care about a macro. You don't need to track anything. You don't need an app. I don't do any of that stuff, nor do I encourage my patients to do it. It makes no sense. I do not need this to tell me when or how to eat. Yoking an app to that is just causing a different way of dysregulation and disordered eating. You don't need that. I don't even need there's not even a clock in my house. I don't need that. I can tell what time it is. You just look outside. Right?
That's so I'm guessing you don't even wake up with any alarm clocks, do you?
No, I don't.
Yeah, perfect. I had another question for you because when we were talking, you spoke about melatonin, and what a lot of people think melatonin is just a pill that makes you sleepy, but it, like you mentioned, it's a very powerful antioxidant. Yeah. And with all the work that I've been seeing in the anti-aging field, I know that melatonin can upregulate all these longevity pathways, and it's just, some evidence shows that it's anti-cancer. It can reduce insulin levels, so many different things. But I want to share a story. Now, a few months ago, I had a very busy travel schedule. I was very lucky to travel quite a lot. But then that threw me off my sleep. It threw me off my circadian rhythmicity. And for times like this, I always have some kind of a hack or a backup plan. And in this case, it was melatonin. And like I mentioned to everyone, melatonin is this hormone, and it gets activated with the presence of, or the not presence of light. As it gets darker, you have more melatonin secretion in your pineal gland. And I heard a doctor advocate a couple of months ago for very high dose melatonin. They were using suppository melatonin at that time, but in an upwards of 100 mg. And that's a very high dose because your average dose would be anywhere between 1 to 3 grams. So I wanted to know, do you recommend melatonin with your patients? Is melatonin a part of your protocol? Because I decided to do that experiment, and I went for 3 months with melatonin. I was just having 3 to 5 grams of melatonin every day, and it was perfect. My travels were beautiful because I could sleep on time and wake up on time. And when I first heard this doctor speak about this, they mentioned that melatonin doesn't have a negative feedback loop, so it would not disrupt your body's endogenous production of melatonin. But I wanted to get your take on it because recently I've tried to get off that experiment, and it's been it's my sleep latency has been a bit challenged, and now I've started waking up in the middle of the night, just feeling like a hot flash, and just it's difficult to go back to sleep. Is it there's something that you've seen before?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question, because melatonin is very, I think, controversial in that health space. And I was very anti-melatonin years ago. And then I am definitely shifting, being open to I'm wrong on that. And the high dose melatonin protocols of, I forget the researcher, his name, it's this old guy, is awesome. But like Schallenberger and lots of them are high dose melatonin. And so I've been exploring it over the last couple of years and looking at the difference of what it is. I mean, your mitochondria actually make melatonin. Every cell in your body, except the red blood cells, are making melatonin. And it starts with your eyes with ocular melatonin. So the morning is important, right? To start the process, and then there's a release that goes on. So with the pineal gland later on in the day, you need darkness. And when I said darkness deficiency, I really mean it. I think we have a serious problem with light pollution and light exposure, that I think people are way under nourished in melatonin because they are never releasing what they need. We're never in darkness anymore. Right? They're addicted to the phones and the gadgets,
laptops, and
So if you think about, the average, the lowest amount of darkness of hours a human is supposed to have is like 9. If you look at how the world is, it's like 9 hours a day up in some of the northern. I'm not going to talk about the outliers of where there's never darkness. Okay, but typically it's 9 to 14 hours a day of darkness you're supposed to have. This is why now suddenly there's a very powerful retreat and therapy of going into dark. Have you heard about going in the darkness for like 10 days?
I have come across it. I haven't really explored it, but I've seen this circulate around.
People are having massive psychedelic and transformational experiences doing it. And it makes a lot of sense. Where you're like, when I first heard it a couple of years ago, I was like, you did what? It was Marcus Arbery. I'm like, you went and did what? Why the hell? But I was like, oh, right.
It makes sense.
We're supposed to have 10, 12, 14 hours a day of pure darkness. Only a little bit of the light of the moon, which is no blue light, by the way. That's red and orange waves, and it looks white. So that's real darkness to us. That's massive melatonin. And melatonin is doing all the cleaning and repairing basically all night in so many ways. It does so many things well beyond that. We think of it as sleep. It doesn't actually cause sleep at all. That's not what it does. It's just supposed to be in super high levels at night so you can heal and recover at night. And it's made from serotonin, one of the ways it's also made as well. So if people have low serotonin, that might be more your problem. You might need like 5-HTP. You might want to look at that in the evening and see if that starts to increase your sleep, because you need to get a little more serotonin in that. So sometimes people are taking melatonin kind of for the wrong reason, because their serotonin is low, right? Trouble sleeping is related to their low serotonin-based depression, right? So do I recommend it? So when COVID had come out a year and a half ago, I didn't know what was coming down the pipeline. I'm just listening to the physicians that's out of Wuhan. I'm like, this don't look good. And that is when I introduced high dose melatonin to my patients, to my mother, to everybody else. I put my mother on 60 milligrams 4 times a day. As well as, right? So I started taking high dose melatonin. I knew for a short stint of time, it's a potent immune system builder, and it is amazing for cancer. So I was like, I was anti it. There's some people are saying there is a negative feedback loop. And then the other reasons like, no, there's not. And so it seems like that's a myth. And the real research is like, it doesn't do that. You guys are misunderstanding melatonin. You're not understanding. So I don't want people ideally, I don't want you taking it every day. It's awesome to help for things like jet lag. I think if you're in a high risk immune situation, it's a great antioxidant that can be taken more. I think the use of it in these cancer protocols that Schallenberger and all them, I think that's very, very interesting. And why not? It's cheap. It's cheap as dirt. It's like nothing. I sell it on my website, a large pack. It's like $10. And that thing's going to last you 6 months. The powder form, a very good clean version. I give it to my dog every day. My dog has
Oh,
pancreatitis.
interesting.
My dog has pancreatitis and diabetes,
Okay.
and he's been in the hospital 6 times in the last year, and he's been near death many times. Like it's a powerful, and he was up all night, going to the bathroom because of the diabetes. So I've started giving it to him. It does help because his sleep was being so disordered from his pancreas. I'm like, he's
Mm-hmm.
never getting what he needs. And I know it's a major antioxidant. So I give it to my dog. I take it occasionally. I do take it when I travel. I don't take it daily like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I know more about, Corona and everything that's really going on, I backed my mom off, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So, but she's 76 years old. She's barely making any melatonin. I know her serotonin is low. I know she's up in the light all the time, and she has a bladder problem and she's always peeing. So she's not getting any. So I would much rather have her take it in a pill form so she's getting what should be happening at night, because it's not happening. So I think you have to look at it like that. I definitely use it with my night shift workers. That's a horrible lifestyle and a job for them. They're just completely jacked. That's why they're all overweight and they all become diabetic mostly. It's so hard for these night shift nurses, night shift police, paramedics. I will use it to leverage that for them because they're not getting any. So imagine how many years of not making enough melatonin. That adds up, just like years of not making glutathione. It doesn't work out well for you, right? So
For sure.
do I use it? Yeah, I'm still, playing with it.
What form are you using? Like what delivery mechanism or a form are you using? Because you're using high dose as well.
I use powder, bulk powder. I think is the brand that's on my website. It comes, I think it's out of Europe. But
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's very, very affordable. And so you can just, with the dog, I put it in his little meat treat and he just swallows it down. And me, I put in a little bit of water and drink it. I actually have my mother on capsules just because she's persnickety. So with the older you get, you have to, like, they have trouble swallowing. Sometimes they want a powder, sometimes they want a capsule. There's really a vagal nerve issue. So swallowing in stressed out, anxious people is hard. And older people, it's hard. So I have different forms based upon what I can do for somebody, and sometimes combined with CBD, that kind of thing. But yeah, so I don't. It's a thing I'm exploring, CJ, and I'm open to. Most of the time when I have people that I respect, I'm like, there's truth in all of it. Like you're right and you're right, and so the right time and the right place and the right therapy for the right situation.
It depends for a different person. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you so much for sharing that. That did clear a few things that I had in my head. And now we're reaching the end of the podcast. And my final question to you is, if you had a time machine, if you could go back in time, if you could rewind the time and you could go meet your younger self, what would be that one piece of advice, or you can give yourself 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you would give yourself knowing all that you know right now?
Oh, God. Okay. So, let's not get too personal, but I would probably, honestly,
Eat fat and like take care of mitochondria, probably.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say never become a vegetarian or a vegan, like that.
Okay.
Again, it helped me become who I am and learn. But in general, what it did to my body, I broke my back. I really was jacked up over that whole situation. I'd say never become a vegetarian. And just because I'm a 48-year-old business owner and a mom, I'd say compound interest and Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, yeah.
I'd say, and I had people tell me that compound interest, when I pulled money out of things, and I'm like, God, I really didn't understand what they were saying. So I would have been like, yeah, this is what you better do. So those would be big ones. And in general, most of my mistakes are, I got mold illness a few years ago. Would I tell myself, hey, don't buy that house and get yourself sick? Probably not, because it helped make me extraordinary at helping people with that. I learned about all this electromagnetic stuff. I learned about light better. So most of the bad stuff that's happened to me has ultimately been, and it's always in my best interest. So there's a few, just 1 or 2 things I might want to say, but I'm not going to say that publicly. But I would say
that's okay. We'll take the Bitcoin.
Never a vegetarian. Bitcoin. Jump
and
on
take care of your mitochondria.
Yeah, I would probably advise myself to get out of the city and learn learn nature and learn hunting more, because I'm from Detroit. It's not like a thing. It's not like a thing.
Yeah.
And my mom's from India, and she had no desire to ever go back and never live that way. And now you don't need to go back there. And she's happy to be in America and all this stuff. And it's like, you don't want to see what the bugs look like over there, right? So I was kind of enamored with the city too much, and I'm looking now. I wish at this age, trying to learn how to connect to the land is a little hard. So I wish I would have gotten into it in my 20s a little bit more.
But now you have your son with you, so you can learn a lot of tricks from him and then just keep on exploring.
Yeah.
Dr. Rimka, thank you so much for everything that you've done in, with the kind of information that you've been giving out to the world, the patients that you've been seeing. And I just want to express my gratitude for everything that you've done and coming on the show today. If people want to find you, what is the best way to get in touch with you? Is it through your website? Is it through Instagram? Is it some other way?
Well, the best way is to email. That way my staff can help filter. It gets a little overwhelming on social media, but you are welcome to follow me on Instagram. It's or my website. So drrimka.com, drrimka.com, or Dr._Rimka Instagram or Facebook. You can find me. And just be patient if you send me social media messages. Sometimes it's just, it gets a little overwhelming, but we are trying to stay on top of it. My staff does see all those things. They aren't really private. If you email, it kind of gets on the office kind of rotation a little bit easier. But you might get me. That's why people send it, because sometimes they'll get like, yeah, it's me. What do you know? If I can't answer the question quickly, I always try. I obviously can't give intense advice about medications and things like that. You're going to need to make an appointment, and I am available for that as well. I see people all over the world. We do it virtually. I can read your labs or look at brain maps and give second opinions on things, or help you with especially brain-based things for children and adults. So I'm available, drrimka.com. And I also have a retreat coming up. I'll have to tell you about that. So
tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's the last thing, but we have, I think, 5 more spots. It was supposed to be at the beginning of COVID, but it all had to get canceled because South Africa put down. But it is South Africa. We're going on safari, not a hunting trip, but it is a animal-based kind of keto carnivore, private chef, private location in a conservation, huge conservation. Yeah. So we're going to be learning how to track animals and learning all the conservation things and real immersion. We have beds and toilets and sinks, but it's not air conditioned and fancy. So it's that nice in between. It's called an eco safari. You have a bed, but it's an open tent, open to the sky, so you'll wake up to the sun. You'll go to sleep around a campfire and have amazing food. Everything will be taken care of. So that's on my retreat. So that's coming up April 2022.
April, awesome. Yeah. Okay, so if anyone who's interested, please go onto the website and you can get to see how to live with nature in South Africa. That sounds exciting. I'm going to have a look at it as well.
I know, right? Go back to the motherland.
Yeah, go back to the motherland. Exactly. Again, thank you so much for being on the show. And it was great to talk to you. It was great to learn from you. And like I said, for people who are listening, we were talking offline and I just had so many things. Dr. Rimka is just such a wealth of knowledge. Like, I didn't know which direction to take this conversation. I was like, I want to ask her this and I want to ask her that. But for the benefit of time, whatever we learned today was really great. Thank you. I hope to see you in the future sometime.
I'd love it. I'd love it.
Right. And this is me, CJ, signing off from shiftwithcj.com. You guys have a great day ahead of you. Take care. Bye now.